thank you for watching this video about the keys to powerful communication. This is an amazing subject. What are words? Words are like a light for your pathway so you can see where to go. Words, if you think about it, can show someone where to step and where to go at any given time. One of the best phrases I could share with you is, don't be lazy in language. Because the gift of language can create a career. It can help somebody see the way into the future. It can help somebody change from where they are as to where they would like to be. It will also help you see the gift of your own intellect. It is quite astounding. Our bodies arrive on this earth for a limited amount of time. And time is a commodity that you can never, ever replace. As a great man once said, you cannot add more minute to your day, but you can utilize each one to the fullest. Such an amazing concept. And one of the gifts, however, that we have as human beings is the gift of speaking. Interesting. No other universe has that. Each one of us in our own language has an innate vocabulary that helps us to see, helps us to translate what's going on in the world and what's happening so that we can make good decisions instead of poor ones. So we can make fewer mistakes this year than we made last year. One of the major things to pray for is to be gifted in language, because it can have such a dynamic effect on your children. It can have such a dynamic effect on your business. It can have such a dynamic effect with your patients. It can even have such a dynamic effect on your colleagues. In my humble opinion, not to continually get better and better at the gift of language would be a great mistake. Do you know what is one of the most important books in your home? The dictionary. Yep, the dictionary. If there's ever a word that you don't understand, you can look it up and make it part of your vocabulary. Interesting. Something about my personal life. I was raised in Paris, France. And so my native language is actually French. And when I was 17, I was fortunate enough that my parents sent me to the United States to attend college. Well, as fate would have it, I met a very wonderful, special young lady who became my wife. We have been happily married now for over 4 decades. And so obviously I never went back to France. Now, when I first arrived to America, I didn't speak English. So I made a concerted effort from the very first day that I got here to carry around a small notepad, and every time I heard a word that I didn't know, I looked it up in my French dictionary. It was a pocket dictionary that I had, just a small one. And I carried it everywhere I went. I'm humbled in pride to say that a few years ago, I wrote a 455-page book entitled The Ultimate You. In fact, I have a copy right here. 455 pages. The Ultimate You, which is now in its 3rd printing edition. Now you could say that I am passionate about the art of mastering your language because to me, it's a gift which helps you communicate with others. And all those years that I have been here, I have constantly tried to work on this craft and improve the skill because I think it's so critical to life. And it's not in an ordinary way, but in an extraordinary way. Not like everyone else that you want to learn these words, but rather different from everyone else. Communication is the practice of using your gift of saying things another way until a light turns on. Another way that expresses something heartfelt that the standard ordinary language wouldn't express or couldn't reach or couldn't paint these mental pictures. With a broad vocabulary, you can choose the appropriate words that are meaningful, words that are uniquely uplifting. The more you accumulate, the more words, the more that they will have a stronger and lasting impact. Whether it's a little talk, with your family, and it's a gathering that you're in, whether it's training your staff, or whether you're assisting a patient, understanding their condition, you must keep improving it. With a steady, disciplined practice, you will find that a new way to say things will grow on you. It's a new illustration, a new story. Again, something personal. When my dear father passed away, my loving mother was asked to decide on a few short words that she had to engrave on his tombstone. So obviously, my mother knew that the gravestone space was very limited. And even though at the time when, in her deep grievance time, given the circumstances, she nevertheless wanted her message to encapsulate the 60 years of happy marriage that they had together. After a short moment of deep reflection, she came up with the following words, and is what she said: "For all the happiness you brought me and to my life, you will always be with me." It was short, very short, but full of heartfelt feelings, and she succeeded in expressing what was going on in her heart and in her soul at that moment. So, in learning about how to improve your communication skills, I'm asking you not to fail and say what you need to say from the depth of your being. Here's an expression that you have to probably, master, but something you must have heard, perhaps in your lifetime, I'm not sure. There's a saying that says, words are no substitute for action. That's true. But here's another word. Here's something else that I want you to remember. One action is no substitute for word. It's okay to do, but you've also got to say it, and say it well. You must express yourself, even as awkward as it may sound. With the practice it will get better, and I promise you, you will become more fluent. It'll flow. It'll show. You'll master it. I once read about a survey among prisoners. I think I read in one of the articles, and they were working on a rehabilitation program where they found that there is definitely a relationship between vocabulary and behavior. And the researchers found out and concluded that the more limited the vocabulary, the more tendency towards poor behavior. And when you think about it, it makes sense. Indeed, you see, these words are a way of seeing. Words in general, it's for us to say something that projects it. And if you don't have a good vocabulary, you can't see well. Can you actually imagine the mistakes in judgment when you can't see very well? Here's another interesting study from a leading university. It's over a period of several decades. And the researchers wanted to know why some people moved up financially in their lives and why some countries moved up financially. What they found regarding people is that it had to do with vocabulary. That's quite amazing. Words are very powerful. Many other studies have been done about the plants and water, how plants and water actually live by the words that you say. If you speak positively to a plant versus speaking negatively to a plant. It's quite amazing. So many studies that are there that you can look them up. A word is a condensed thought, and one word can have many meanings. Take, for example, words like love, freedom, family, and success. They can fill an entire book and many other books in your library. Words that you might know in this condensed thought, you know better and you can think better because you can use them properly. These words together into a more complex thought, and as a result, you can make better decisions. Words are a way of expressing what's going on in your head and what's going on in your own heart. Imagine if you have a vision and you cannot properly express it or explain it to your team or the person that you're speaking with. That would be a tragic scenario. Now, and think of this, and now the consequences after 5 years or 10 years or 15 years later, and no growth. That would be detrimental, a disaster. Here's another concept in communication to consider, and that's the word sensitivity. You've got to empathize with the people where they're coming from and where they are when you're speaking with them. Sensitivity training is so important because you don't know if people are experiencing challenging. And these challenges, we don't know what they are. They could be problems or difficulties. What you've got to do when you're speaking to somebody is you've got to do your best to be sensitive to other people and find them and be with them where they are at that time. You've got to tune into people's problems and concerns. It's amazing how much better you will turn your life around and communicate with them. How should you speak to your patients? As though they are your own family member. Each and every one of them, at all times. Here's another point to remember. When you communicate with someone, think of express, not impress. If you want to touch somebody, learn to express sincerity from the heart, not impress. Impress builds a gulf. Express builds a bridge. Valuable communication is building a bridge and making contact. Here's one of the clues which is important to remember. In a conversation, find something that you have in common with that person. That's where they are. And before you try to take them where you want them to go, meet them where they are. If somebody's hurting, talk about their hurt. Meet them right there. Somebody's in trouble, go to the trouble and start with their trouble. The key is to start where somebody is. You can't talk about success if somebody's in trouble. You've got to start, first of all, talking about the trouble. Here's another important concept about communication. Read your audience. First and simply, listen. Because part of reading the audience is to listen. You pick up a lot of clues and what else has to say if you're a good listener. As a consultant, my job entails 90% of the time to listen to my clients' issues so I can really better and assist them with a good solution. As someone said, a person who is born with 2 ears and 1 mouth, meaning that you should listen twice as much as you should talk. Active listening is very important. It's important in relationship, it's important in life, it's important in growth, important in success, important everywhere. Active listening means that the person is really there. We have a rule, actually, in my home, between my wife and I. The children, thank God, are all married today. But we have a rule that as soon as we get home, we're not allowed to look at our phones. And I'm suggesting this to you. When you get home, establish a rule to put down your phones. Any magazine, turn off the television, ask questions, and listen carefully to the answers. Listen. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Get out of yourself and don't be preoccupied with what the other person is thinking about you. Instead, focus on encouraging the other person to talk about themselves. And the more the person is talking about themselves, the more they'll feel encouraged to open up. This is so important. Here's another good habit. When you get home at night, don't talk about your day. Instead, ask your spouse or partner and family members about their day and listen closely. The more you listen, the more the person trusts you, the more they will open up to you. Treat the members of your family and everybody you meet as though they are the most important person in your life. Wherever you are, be there at 100%. Don't ever compromise on that. By the way, it's interesting, but women are more wonderful communicators than men. They're fabulous listeners and far better than men. Interesting, but it's the truth. Always be careful not to jump into a conclusion before you hear the whole story from anybody. As a matter of fact, to show that you're listening, sometimes what you should do, and I do this many times, paraphrase what you heard and repeat it in your own words of what you heard, and then ask the questions. It opens up the communication. It makes it so that both parties are speaking to one another. The intensity of the words that you must use are mixed with emotions at all times. What you should do, however, is always try to avoid negative words or words with negative connotation. For instance, when somebody is expecting and they have a due date, due means there is a time limit. Change that to delivery date, which means expansion, opening, birth. When somebody says they don't want to be a guinea pig, I don't want to be a guinea pig at all. They're not a guinea pig. They could be a pioneer. Or somebody says, can you try to figure out on how to drag me out of this problem, out of this trouble? Use the word uplift. Instead of calling a place where the sick people are, call it the house of healing. The refinement of any leadership skills is learning to measure your emotions with the proper words. If you're trying to communicate the minor points, you don't need to use big words or sometimes things that are cataclysmic. We don't need a cataclysmic explosion. The key to effective communication is well-chosen words mixed with measured emotion. It's a gift. And you'll have the style, you'll have the sharpness, you'll have the clarity and the substance and the true emotion if you perfect your skill at all times. You see, I believe that the world is not a cruel and meaningless place where you see massive hurtling blindly through space of all these people. This world is God's chosen garden, His finest creation and finest home that He created. Realizing and living this truth largely depends on how one views and understands the world around, within you and without you. When you look out at the world and into the soul, do you see a wasteland or a wonderland? Do you see a desert or an oasis? We each have the power to define and influence our experience based on our perception of actively seeking the positive aspect or the opportunity given in a situation and believing deeply in God's ultimate goodness, His imminent presence, living with a purpose, responsibility, meaning. These qualities provide a radical therapy for a good life. Words matter. Very, very much so. And they should encourage all of us, including myself, to exalt in all aspects of circumstances. Our language defines us and the world we inhabit. Our words can limit or liberate us. Choose them carefully and consciously. You know, it's interesting. That reminds me of a study. Two neuroscientists, Andrew Newberg and Mark Roberts Waldman, they found that words can change your brains. Here's what they said. They said that a single word has the power to influence the expression of the genes that regulate physical and emotional stress. Actually, as a matter of fact, MRI scans demonstrate that a single negative word can increase the activity in the amygdala, which is the fear center in the brain, which I'm sure you know. And now just seeing a list of negative words, just by seeing them, just reading them for a few seconds, will make a highly person understand to become anxious or depressed. Crazy. And they feel even worse if they keep on looking at them and they keep on reading them. The damage becomes even greater. The key brain structures that regulate memory, feelings, and the emotions further impact the sleep, the appetite, and the overall well-sense being of who we are. And if you vocalize your negativity, even more stress chemicals will be released. Not only in your brain, but in the listener's brain. So not just you, but the other person that you're speaking with. Both people will experience increased anxiety, irritability, and even at times undermining the potential for the mutual cooperation and trust. But here's something which is even more astounding, and something to focus on. Research indicates the reverse, and that is that true and positive words, like words of peace, love, they found that using these words can literally transform your reality. Language choices have a psychological impact on people, including ourselves. And the words have the power to affect reality so much that the words can actually channel raw energy into concrete action. And you have to understand that. You have to remember that. These are truths, facts. And that's the key to powerful communication. It's not just wanting to say something, it's how you say it, the words that you use. I hope this was beneficial, and I wish you and your families nothing but good. God bless you. Thank you.